The Callisto Protocol had me feeling like this and this. But I'd be lying if I told y'all that I didn't enjoy this game. To be honest, I really like this game. I know a lot of people are writing it off as a bad game, and they're completely entitled to that opinion. I can't say that I blame them for feeling that way, because I felt the same way in a lot of different scenarios within this game. There was a lot of frustration when it came to the combat. There was frustration when it came to some stuff with the story, like technical issues. I did experience all of those things. Not as bad as some people. I was playing on PS5, so I know that PC users are going to have a much worse experience than I did. So I'm glad about that. I'm grateful for that. Because, it did help me form a better opinion of the game. But like I said, I can see why someone would be disappointed with the game or upset with it. On the flip side of that, though, I did like this game. I did have problems with this game, but it didn't take away from my overall experience with it. And like I said, there was times when this game had me mad. Like extremely mad, frustrated, all of that. Mainly because some stuff with the gameplay. This game heavily relies on melee attacks, getting up close and personal, using your crowbar, baton, and all that stuff, right? You basically 42ing everybody, right? You baseballing everybody. But the problem isn't necessarily the strikes themselves. Like, you hitting the melee button isn't the problem. And not even the little dodge mechanic that they have in this game. I don't think that's much of a problem either. Even though it might be tricky to some people at first, as far as getting the hang of it and everything. The main problem for me was just the overwhelming amount of enemies that you fight at once. This game does not feel like it's designed for you to be facing multiple enemies at once. It very much feels like it should have been a one-on-one sort of ordeal, or like it was designed to be a one-on-one sort of thing, but they just happen to throw in a bunch of enemies at once. And it gives the same impression, or I say it gives me the same vibe that I got when I played God of War 2018 for the first time, where it's like the camera doesn't feel like how the camera is and how the game is in general. It doesn't feel like you're meant to be facing so many enemies at once. If you have a couple enemies in front of you, that's okay. Maybe one or two to the side, okay. But when you have a influx of enemies surrounding you, it can get very overwhelming and extremely frustrating. And at least on God of War, they had warnings that an enemy was behind you, so you would know if someone was behind you to the right or to the left. So that did help that game. It was still frustrating, but it did help. This game doesn't have that, but I don't think it's a bad thing, because it's a horror game. That's kind of the whole purpose, that you don't know what to expect. You don't know whether or not someone's behind you or not. It's just, in the combat scenarios, it can be very annoying though. Like, having to face an enemy in front of you and you're trying to dodge them left and right, and then you're getting hit by a dude on the side. There's not really much you can do as far as mobility to get away. You can't really dodge besides the left and right shit. You can't like roll on the ground and get out the way. You can't really do much. There's not a quick turn, at least not that I'm aware of. And it can be just a little jank, if I'm being honest. It didn't ruin my experience, but it can be a little jank. Deadspace is definitely more polished, I'd say, when it comes to that. But Deadspace didn't have much mobility either. But you know, it's 2022. I expect a little bit more options. You should be at least like have like another dodge, so when the enemy's behind you, you can just kind of get out the way more quicker instead of having to, you know, do a full-on turn and run. And yeah, it could just be pretty clunky at times. But beyond that, I'd say the only thing that really annoyed me gameplay wise, besides the multiple enemies, was how spongy they can be. You'll be hitting these guys like 1,000 times, it feel like. Hundreds of times. I feel like I'll be hitting them, shooting them, and it doesn't appear like you're doing anything. You knock their head off, they still fighting you. And they're not just like fighting you for a couple more hits. Like, they fighting you as if they had their head still on. I'm like, man, when's it gonna end? Like, there's a bunch of moments I had where I was just like, when are you gonna die? I would be hitting them, shooting them with a shotgun and stuff. And obviously you get more stronger as the game progresses, as you upgrade your weapons and stuff, which, oh, I actually forgot about that. Upgrading your weapons and all is cool. It can be kind of hard to find credits or whatever. You can sell some items to get more credits and whatnot, but the main thing as far as upgrading that bothered me was how long it takes. Like, there's times where I was just upgrading my baton and the shit, like, it literally took like maybe like 3-4 minutes just for me to upgrade. You know, at least if you're doing it multiple times, like if you just want to keep adding upgrades to your stuff, you're gonna be sitting there for a minute, because I don't know, Jacob, that's the main character's name, he takes his time. And the game is realistic, but I ain't gonna lie, I do think games can get a little bit too realistic, if you know what I mean.
The highest quality. Have a united day. Executing. Print finished. Please operate responsibly. Cycle complete.
I don't mind realism in the games that much, but I do feel like the developers should have made the upgrade process just a bit more quicker. You know, it's cool to see Jacob looking at the weapon like, this is cool, you know, this looks clean now, but I ain't trying to see that every single time, I'm not gonna lie. Whenever I upgrade a weapon, I don't want to admire the craftsmanship. You know, I just don't want to be staring at him, stare at his weapon the whole time. We got to keep things going. Games like God of War, they handle that very well. You upgrade your weapons and it's just like, boom. You hold down the X button, boom, you're done. You don't really see Kratos grab the blades and like admire all the details to find. Yeah, it's cool. Like, it's cool feature, I guess, to some extent. Like, you get to see what you got, you know what I mean? You see what your upgrade did to the weapon. You're like, okay, now it looks a little different. Now it got some color to it. But I didn't really care for all that. I just was trying to keep going. So that could be a little tedious, especially when you're upgrading a whole bunch. Like, towards the end of the game, I was upgrading. I was just sitting there like damn. They really make you feel like you're upgrading your weapons for real. Like, I felt like I was Jacob himself holding the weapon, looking at the weapon, grabbing the weapon. Like, Yeah. They could have done a little better with that. But that's just like kind of a minor thing, if I'm being honest. But I can see why it would annoy someone, so I'm just throwing it in there. On a brighter note though, while I do think that this game's greatest weakness, as far as its combat, is how it handles multiple enemies, I feel like you're just not supposed to be fighting all these enemies at once. It does not work in the game's favor whatsoever. It very much comes off like you're supposed to be facing one person at a time, but you'll be getting jumped from every angle. And mind you, if you were just fighting one alien at a time, it would be lame, it would be boring. People would complain about that as well. But how they went about multiple enemies coming at you, it just doesn't work well with how the combat is. Like dodging left and right from one person, and then someone else coming behind you and like sneak attacking you. That, you know, it just can get very frustrating. But like I said, while I do think that's its greatest flaw or weakness, I also think that it plays to this game's advantage. I think it's its greatest strength. And let me explain. So this game doesn't really have puzzles. It's not like a typical or more traditional survival horror game where you go from encounter to puzzle, some exploration, back to encounter, back to exploration, back to puzzle. You know, more of the Resident Evil type, Silent Hill. It's not like that. It is very straightforward compared to those games. What I believe though is that this game's puzzle is within its combat. I think that every encounter that you come across is meant to be the game's puzzle. These are the moments where you're supposed to be really thinking about how you should maneuver, you know, how you should maneuver through every encounter and how you should go about defeating the enemies. Because like I said, when you're facing multiple enemies at once, it can be extremely, and I mean extremely, overwhelming. Because you're just like, alright, I'm hitting this dude, but then this dude's coming out of nowhere, and then it's like this dude's coming out of nowhere. And when you look at it as just a, I don't know, just another brawl, or like you're just going into another fight, I feel like it can make the game seem weaker than it is. But when you treat it like a puzzle, and you think about just all the different ways that you can go about the situation, I feel like the game shines more than it normally would. Once I started thinking of the encounters more as puzzles rather than just straight, well, one-on-one fights, that's when I really started to enjoy the combat more. Because I wasn't just trying to get in and just beating people up, because that wasn't working. There were so many times where I'd go into an encounter and I was just treat it like a third-person shooter or something. You know, I was just like, okay, let me shoot this dude. Let me just start hitting these guys. And I wasn't really putting much thought into it, because there were times where I was frustrated. So I was just like, let me just get this over with. Let me hit this guy. And then I still would end up losing, you know. And I would get more frustrated. And like I said, I feel like this is where the game truly shines. Because the game was so overwhelming, it forced me to really think about what I was doing. Most of the mistakes I made, you know, were my own fault. Like, besides like the bugs and stuff where it was like, okay, this is just, they just BS me basically, right? Besides that, every time I lost, it was my fault. It was my own mistake. It wasn't the game's fault. And each time I would replay that scenario, I had to think, like, okay, that didn't work, let me try this. Okay, that didn't work, let me try this. And then I would get closer and closer, and I'm like, okay, this works. But I'm not getting through the whole level, you know, through the whole part. I would get far, you know, close but no cigar, basically, right? And then I would just keep evolving my mindset and tweaking it to where I got like a perfect pattern down. And like I said, once I started thinking that way about the game, or more so once I started to go about things that way, right? I would go into a counter and I was just like, okay, I can't just look at this like I'm just fighting them. I have to actually think, like really think about what I'm gonna do. Otherwise, I'm just gonna keep messing up. As soon as I did that, the game got a whole lot more better. Like, it got way more deep to me, way more fun. Because, like I said, I feel like this is the game's puzzle. I feel like the puzzle is within the combat, within the encounters. You're not really gonna be moving chess pieces around and, turning clocks and stuff like that. But you're gonna go into an encounter and you're gonna have to figure out how to overcome the odds, because the odds are overwhelming. And like I said, every time I would go into it, just go hitting people, I wasn't really thinking about it. At least, especially like later on. Like early on, you can get away with it, but later on, when I was doing that, it just wasn't working out. And as soon as I started to look at it, like, okay, they set up all these. They got like traps in the environments that you can use. They got things you can pick up to, blow people up. Not barrels, but I don't know what they are. They're like these tubes that you can pick up and make people explode. But yeah, you start to observe the environment, observe how many enemies around you, observe how much ammo you got, and all that stuff. Stuff that you would find in, traditional survival horrors. You're like, okay, I gotta manage this, manage that, manage that. That's when the game really shined, and I feel like that's what made me enjoy the game more, because I was enjoying the amount of possibilities I had. Even though it may seem limited, you do have some good variety in how you can handle the situation and how you can go about it. So I don't like certain things with the combat. I don't like how all the enemies gang up on you, and it feels kind of unfair given the gameplay. But at the same time, because I felt so overwhelmed and I felt so frustrated, when I was going about things, because I was going about things a certain way, because I felt so frustrated, that's what pushed me to think more. That's what pushed me to evolve my gameplay. And once I evolved my gameplay, I realized, oh, it's not really that frustrating. I'm just going about it the wrong way. And the game became far more enjoyable. So, there's that. And obviously, I'm aware that not everyone's going to find this appealing. There are going to be some people that don't want to go through the whole trial and error way of things, and that's completely understandable. Like I said, I can see both sides of the argument when it comes to this game. I found it frustrating at times, and I did find it annoying, but I never felt like I couldn't get through what was going on. For every part that felt overwhelming, it also felt like it could be overcome. So, it was a nice balance for me where it was challenging, it was annoying, but I still enjoyed it. Honestly though, like, every game can be annoying, honestly. I feel like even games that we love annoy us at times. God of War Ragnarok was great to me. That was an amazing game to me. That game annoyed me quite a few times, if I'm being honest. My favorite video game of all time is Metal Gear Solid. Metal Gear Solid is my favorite game series, favorite video game. Solid Snake's my favorite character, all that. And there were times when that game would annoy me. And I love it. So it's like, it's always going to be like that, especially when it comes to media. Favorite movies, favorite games, you're going to find stuff to love and hate. But I can see both sides when it comes to this game. When it comes to the story of this game, while I don't think it's anything Oscar worthy, it's not God of War level storytelling. It's not Last of Us level storytelling. None of those. It's nothing like that. It's pretty straightforward, but I enjoyed the story. At first, it did come off kind of bare bones. I was just like, okay, dude's ship gets attacked, ship crashes, gets locked up for whatever the reason, and now you're trying to escape the prison. That's like the basic summary of the story, right? At least from the beginning. But as you go further and you start to meet more characters and all of that, you know, it really had me invested. I'm not gonna lie. I was up there thinking like, okay, what's the deal with Jacob? Like, who is this guy? What's his gig, right? Why does this character feel this way towards him? Why does this character, you know, I started to really think about that stuff. And, you know, as you're exploring the prison, you'll find just a whole bunch of different pieces of lore. You'll see missing signs and stuff like that. And you're like, huh, like what's going on? You know, it just makes you curious. At least it kept me curious, right? And by the end of the game, while I was kind of, and you know, without spoiling, I was kind of like, okay, towards the ending. Like, I didn't think the ending was bad. I don't think it was great either, though. I was just like, okay, you know, it didn't make me mad or nothing. I was just like, okay. And for those of you who don't know, there is going to be a DLC coming out, like in the summer. And they say it's going to be story DLC. I don't know if it's gonna be a prequel, sequel, whatever, but based off the ending, I hope things go a certain way. Cause yeah, I ain't gonna lie. If they don't do things a certain way with this DLC, your boy gonna be mad. I ain't gonna lie. Like, I like the ending, don't get me wrong, like, well, I think it's cool, you know, I don't hate it or nothing. I liked it. It was solid, right? I don't hate it, but if they don't do something with the DLC, oh, I might hate it. I'm not gonna lie. I ain't spoiling nothing, you know. I'm not saying it's necessary. I'm not saying it's a bad ending or a great ending or anything like that. This is my personal opinion. I hope that they do something with the DLC, because I'd be mad. I would be disappointed if they don't. And you can take that as you wish, but my recommendation is, you know, you play the game or check out the story for yourself. But yeah, as far as graphics though, and performance, like I said, the game does have some bugs. It does have some glitchiness to it. Especially during the combat, I had some dumb stuff happening to me, and I would just be sitting there like, you know, like, you know, like on The Office, how they look at the camera. That was me. I was just looking at the camera like what in the world happened? But as far as the atmosphere and how the cutscenes look and all of that, oh man, there are some moments in this game that look so good, like, so good, especially like when you get your suit later on and you just look at Jacob's mask, like the visor, it looked real. Like, I'll be looking at his face and I'm like, whoa, why does it look like the dude for Transformers for real? That's the only thing I've seen this guy or this actor in besides this game is Transformers. So I was like, oh, that's the dude from Transformers. And yeah, it looks just like him. It's pretty spot on. It's pretty crazy, honestly. Sometimes when you're looking at it, it's just like, that look real. But yeah, the performance, like I said, can be a little buggy, but the graphics and the atmosphere, especially the atmosphere. Oh man, there's so many times where you just creeping through a hallway or, you know, walking through a corridor and it's just like, ooh, like, the game didn't scare me at all. I'm not gonna lie. In all fairness though, I'm pretty hard to scare these days. Like, it's hard for a game to really scare me as of late. A lot of games I've played lately, they weren't that scary to me. The only games that might give me a run for my money are like some crazy shit like Outlast or what's that game? The Visage, PT, stuff like that. Those games are scary. But this game's not scary to me at all. I didn't even think Deadspace was scary though. And I know people say that Deadspace is way scarier than this, but I mean, I didn't think Deadspace was scary. So it's like, results may vary, I'll just say that. But yeah, the atmosphere though, and how they get the tone and just the feeling of dread that something is coming your way, they absolutely nailed that. I definitely feel like this game does a great job at creating tension and just having you on your toes. Because the whole time I was on my toes, though, I was like, okay, what they about to throw at me next? And that's what I want in a horror game. I want to feel like I'm on the edge of my seat. I want to feel like I don't know exactly what's coming. That's the whole point. So that's really what I came into this game looking for, honestly. And I think that's why I enjoyed it so much. I wanted a spiritual successor to Deadspace. I wanted some space horror action. You know, I wanted to be on the edge of my seat, on my toes, a little bit paranoid, a little bit, I don't know, not at ease, I'd say. I wanted to be scared, but, you know, I wasn't scared, but, you know, I wanted to be. That's the only thing. I wasn't scared, but I still felt the tension. So I'll give it that. But yeah, like, everything I wanted this game to be, I feel like I got out of it. There was some problems with the gameplay. It could have been better, yes. The story could have been more fleshed out. How these characters become so cool in the beginning is kind of funny to me. Cause, like, I mean, if I was in that situation too, where I'm like, I gotta work with someone to break out of a prison filled with aliens and shit, like, I probably would team up with somebody too. I'm not gonna lie. I probably would trust them a little bit more, but at the same time, I'd be a little bit more cautious than like Jacob was. These dudes became like best buds, and the guy that you meet in the beginning of the game, his name is Elias, and he's helping you maneuver through the prison and whatnot. And yeah, it was just like they became best brothers. I was just cracking up because I was like, this dude's like my best friend already. But at the same time, you know, I think they did a good job with what was given. Like, some characters could have been fleshed out a little bit more, and I do hope that they flesh them out more in the whatever future installments they have, whether it's the DLC or if they make a sequel. But I think that for what it was, I mean, it's cool, it's solid. I wasn't expecting no God of War level storytelling anyway, so it didn't bother me too much. It was just kind of funny how, I don't know. Moving on though, I think I got everything that I wanted in this game. It could have been better in a lot of ways, and I can see why people are disappointed with it. I can see why people wouldn't want to buy it, especially if you're on PC. Like, you might as well not play it, honestly. Not right now. But I feel like that's why it's very important to check out games for yourself, check out movies for yourself, because you really never know until you try it for yourself. If I just went off all the reviews that I saw of this game, I would have just been like everybody else. I'd be like, screw this game, I ain't playing that shit. But I can say without a doubt, I'm glad that I played it, and I'm glad that I didn't just go off what the reviews said. Sometimes, don't get me wrong, I do go off reviews a lot. I love watching reviews. I like to take in what people think, you know what I mean? I like to talk about what I think. But at the same time, if you're excited about something and you really are curious about it, like, that's how I felt with this game. I was like, I love Deadspace. I really want to try this game. I know the reviews were bad, but I really want to try this game. So I did. And I enjoyed it. And the same goes for a lot of movies too. There's so many movies that people thought were bad, and I enjoyed it. And there's movies that people thought were good, and I hated them. So, you know what I mean? It's just, it's always going to depend on the person. So, with that being said, don't be afraid to try something out. Now, I'm not saying go blow all your money on something to try it out. Like, don't go paying $75 if you just want to try it out. Like, rent it or wait for a sale at least. But yeah, don't be afraid to try things out. Form your own opinion. Don't just be a follower. Check things out for yourself, because you never know. You might find it to be a diamond in the rough. You know, you might be like, damn, this game's lit. It's like a hidden gem, where everyone else thinks it's shit trash. You never know. And that's just the beauty of gaming and the beauty of life and media in general. It's just finding things out for yourself, figuring out, oh, does this work for me or does this not work for me? Do I like this? Do I not like this? Do I get value out of this? Do I not get value out of this? Etc. Etc. Right? That's just how things go. So, with all of that being said, I just want to thank you all for watching this video. Any of you who made it this far, I truly appreciate it. The video is a bit longer than I expected, to be honest, but I wanted to give my full thoughts and opinions. Well, at least majority of them. I think there are some stuff I could have talked about a bit more, but yeah, I just want to thank you all for the support. I truly appreciate it, and I hope that all of you have a great night or day, depending on when you're watching this. This is Solid J. Take it easy.